It's the 2nd of August and I've already started thinking about next year, planning for and taking action to make sure I have flowers next year. This year has been a bit of a washout, and so I plan to get started early so that if anything happens next year, I've got something already lined up. I'm Nicola, I'm a gardener from Shropshire in the UK, and if you want to learn how to grow cut flowers, then come along with me and I will take you through the highs and lows of growing flowers so that you can fill your house with flowers too. If this year has taught me anything, it's really to expect the unexpected. You can't expect the weather to be perfect. You can rejoice if it is, but you can't expect it. And therefore, if you want a flourishing cutting patch, then you need to make sure that you have plans in place to make sure you've got your flowers starting early. So in some instances, you can't do anything about it. So tender annuals, you cannot start sowing them until spring next year, for next year's season. We're now talking about next year. It's August and we're planning the flowers for next year. So you have to, spring tender annuals is a next year job. Can't do anything about that. How late you leave it will depend on how well your plans are working that you're setting in place now. So I have already sown some biennial seeds. Those seeds were sown mid-June, and if they're anything like last year, the biennials that I sowed for the very first time last year have been amazing, and that's what's kept my cutting patch able to produce flowers for me over the June and July period, in fact. So May, June and July, so 3 months I had flowers that I could cut based on biennials and some perennials that were in flower. Perennials, as they're seasonal, they will flower when they want and finish flowering when they want. So they're finished now. The biennials are also finished, and it's only now, because of the weather this year, that the annuals that I sowed this year are starting to flower. So I have the biennials in progress now. Let me show you those. So here are my biennials. They're planted, or they're sown and being kept in a relatively shady corner of my cutting patch. They don't need much sunshine, they just need to be able to grow and form roots. So I sowed these the 17th of June, the label says, so mid-June, and some are doing better than others. Some I might need to think about whether I plant a few more. Foxgloves are doing fantastically. So these are the apricot Sutton variety. They're a lovely peach colour. They were fabulous this year, so I've planted more of them. Next to them I have a combo of Honesty and Sweet Rocket. Both of these plants end up being quite big, so I don't need many of them. So the Sweet Rocket is in the back. Let me just take you there. It looks like only 3 plants have grown. So I may plant a few more just as a safety net. I'm not sure. I think the 3 plants should actually be enough, but I might sow some more just to be sure that we'll have something to plant come autumn. This is the Honesty, and again, I've only got a few plants come out, and as I say, this has been a month and a half, so they take a little time to get going. One is significantly more than any of the others because we have a little one poking through here. So, but come autumn, that is more than enough to see me through for this year. Next to them we have Sweet William. Now this was glorious. This I have steered away from years. I don't know why I bought the seed packet last year, to be honest, because I kind of thought it was a bit granny-ish. But boy, the grannies knew what they were doing. This flowered for so long and was brilliant. So definitely a must for my garden next year. And all of these 3 plants flowered when not much else was going on in the garden. So this is definitely my safety net for June next year. They should all be in flower, and if luck will have it, we'll have some of them in May, and some will also go on into July, which is what happens with the Sweet William. So that's a good month and a half to 2 months worth of flowers in the bag already. So alongside the biennials, I am also going to start sowing some hardy annuals. So hardy annuals such as snapdragons, larkspur, marigolds, dorcas, although that could be classed as a biennial, amimagus, what else have we got going? Or not got going? Scabiosa, the key thing that's growing now, in fact, is a hardy annual. I could plant those now. So there's a whole host of your annual seeds that you can plant now. For me, last year I sowed them a bit too late in the season for my area of the world. I think I sowed them sometime in September, and they just weren't a big enough plant to withstand the winter. So I didn't plant them outside because I didn't think they were big enough, and I kept them in the greenhouse, which is an unheated greenhouse, and they weren't very well looked after. And as is the case in winter, you can't get in, you can't water them. They were fine until about January, in fact. So they made it through the worst of the frost that we had. But I let them, I think the term is dampen off. So they just got, I didn't water them enough, or in fact I think what I did was water them too much, and then they just got soggy and it mould grow, and basically that was the end. So I am planning to have some plants that will go outside, because some of the plants that I had last year that were self-sown survived all of the winter, so I know that they will work. Nigella is another example. Nigella self-sowed itself throughout the garden and came up this year without any problem, as did cornflower. So there are lots that will flower themselves or sow themselves. So I'm going to give them a helping hand. So I plan to have some that will go in the ground, and I'm hoping the majority of the hardy annuals will survive in the ground. I'll grow them so that they're big enough to be in the ground, and I will have a little bit of a backup in the greenhouse, but I'm not banking on that backup surviving, if you know what I mean. So the hardy annuals will be sown over the course of the next month or so. Well, the next month, it's August now. It will be sown this month, and we'll see where we go. I have some hardy annuals that I sowed at the beginning of June, and they just haven't done that well. I might, so they're still small plants, but they're there. So I might take the risk and plant those. They might be some of the ones that I will be taking forward into the new year. So let me show you what I've got. This is some of the plants that I sowed on the 1st of June, I think it was. Yes, the 1st of June. So I have in this tray snapdragons. So there's quite a few of them, but as you can see, they have not grown much since June. I'm glad that they have germinated, but they haven't grown much. So I think they are brilliant candidates for planting out in September. They should have grown a little bit more, but they definitely won't be in flower. So I'm hoping they will be great for planting out then, and we're taking them forward. I have another variety that I want to try, so I may plant some more and we can compare how well they grow. This, I have to admit, is disappointing. I expected a bit more growth from them. They were planned for flowering this year, so that's where we are. That ain't gonna happen. Next to them we've got larkspur, and I have a love-hate relationship with larkspur. I had one, I think, that flowered last year, maybe two, a pink one and a white one, and that was it. And I sowed and sowed and sowed multiple times with the larkspur last year. This year I haven't sown as often, but I've had similar results, i.e. nothing. So this is the best I've got so far. So I'm hoping these will continue to grow and I can plant them out in the autumn, and I will be planting another batch in the autumn. Part of the growing instructions seem to indicate that larkspur prefer to overwinter, although they do prefer to have germinated first, so my problem is getting the germination. But once I get the hang of it, we'll be fine. So over the coming weeks I'm going to think about what other plants I want to sow that will survive the winter, so hardy annuals, and get them sown so that I've got big enough seedlings to plant out in the autumn. And that, by doing that, by getting them out there early, I'm hoping that I will have flowers for those flowers, have those flowers blooming by June, July. So they're not going to be an April, May time bloom, I wouldn't expect, but hopefully June, July, which will just add to the combination of what I can put out with all of the biennials as well. This year, whilst the biennials were great, that was all there was, along with the perennial. But it would have been good to have a little bit more variety and texture in the flowers that I arranged. So that should do it. And that then means the sowing next spring doesn't have to be quite so early. So the flowers that I'm getting now, which is August, they started flowering maybe mid-July, but they've really only just got going now-ish, in the last week or so. Again, could be because of the weather. But I don't need to plant as many, and I don't need to be so precious about when I do it and trying to desperately get things going. So if things crop up, if we have another long winter, if we have another hot spring, we've got the established hardy annuals and biennials as a backup. So that's my plan. Over the next few weeks I will be planting maybe a few more biennials. It's possibly getting towards the late side, but we shall see. And certainly more hardy annuals. Let me know in the comments below what you plan to plant this year in preparation for next year, or is it too soon for you to think about? You're still enjoying what you've got now. Until next time, happy gardening.